participating. And secondly, just know that some of this information is going to be familiar to you, since I'm going to start us at the very basic of what is redistricting and how does it work. Feel free to tune that out if you already know, but then I'll take us into a brand new territory of actually looking at draft maps, how to analyze draft maps, and how to write really effective and impactful comments on the draft maps that have been produced. So just starting off with the very, very basic, what is redistricting? This is the process of redrawing our legislative districts based on the decennial census count. So we had the census in 2020. Now we know how people have moved throughout New York State, where they've gone to, if they've moved away completely. And now we can redraw our congressional, state, and local legislative office districts to make sure that they are fairly representing the people who live there. And ultimately, what we want to ensure is that every single person's vote is equal when it comes to elected representation at Congress, the state level, and at the local, county, municipal level as well. So here's some fresh information that is new from the last time we did a redistricting training. Here are the 2020 census outcomes. And as you can see here in New York State, our population did grow. Unfortunately, it did not grow fast enough compared to the rest of the country. So New York State had a 4.2% growth rate, whereas nationally there was a 7.4% growth rate. And unfortunately, this does mean we will be losing a congressional district seat, dropping us from 27 congressional elected representatives to 26 starting in 2020. But overall, we did grow, and props to everyone who filled out the census, because I'm sure most of you know we were originally slated to lose 2 seats. So only losing 1 is not too bad. So here's a look at what the national outcome of the census was. So all the states in green are the states who are gaining congressional districts, and the states in purple are the districts that are losing a congressional seat. And you can see it's a lot of rural areas of the state that are gaining seats: Colorado, Montana, North Carolina, and more of the sort of city northeastern areas that are losing seats. I don't know why we are all losing seats, if people are moving because of the weather or the taxes or what. I'll let you all make that determination, but this is how things turned out. All of the numbers on these states are the new congressional number of representatives for 2022. Another look at New York State. Here we're looking at population growth and also population movement and density per square mile. So the very dark blue counties are the counties that are really dense, and the lighter the color, the less density. And of course, I think all of us have a general idea that yes, cities are more dense, more rural areas are less dense, and the more kind of suburban in-between areas are sort of in the middle. And we're seeing a lot of people leaving rural parts of the state, moving to more dense city areas of the state. So that is reflected in our census data as well. And finally, population change from 2010 to 2019. The blue areas are the areas of the state that are gaining population, and the lighter red to dark red are the areas losing, with population with the darkest red losing the most. And again, we're seeing that same thing. More suburban areas and more city areas or urban areas are gaining people, whereas the more rural areas of the state are losing people. So now that we have kind of a synopsis of what the census turnout is, we can focus on how redistricting actually works in New York State. And when we're drawing district lines, we want to consider the following things. We want our lines to be compact. We want them to be contiguous. We want them to preserve political subdivisions. We want them to preserve communities of interest. We want them to preserve the cores of prior districts, be competitive, and not intentionally favor or disfavor an incumbent candidate or party. And this is required by our state constitution. So what do these words mean? These are kind of like abstract terms. Compact essentially means we want our people to live close to each other. We want to have the main dense part of the district be sort of in the center, and we don't want too many people living on the edges. When we say contiguous, that means when we're drawing a district on a piece of paper, we never want to lift up our pen. We never want to draw a piece of district here, pick up our pen and draw a piece of district here. That is not contiguous. Preserving political subdivisions refers to not crossing county, city, or town boundaries whenever possible. It's not always possible, but when possible, we don't want to do that. And preserving communities of interest refers to preserving groups that have significant issues in common. And we're really going to dig into communities of interest in a few slides from now. And if you've already seen our prior training, then you already know all about communities of interest. But essentially, we want to keep groups together that have shared interests and value. So that way, when it comes to elected representation, they're being fairly and accurately represented in the state house and in Congress. Speaking of which, for this particular presentation, that is specifically what we're talking about. We're talking about redistricting for the state Senate, state assembly, and US Congress. Redistricting is starting to happen at local levels throughout the state. It's a little different everywhere, but for this presentation, we're just talking about that for now. And what we're talking about here is a 10-member commission that is actually redrawing our lines for state assembly, state Senate, and Congress. And here I have sort of the format of how these commissioners were appointed. They're supposed to represent New York State residents. They're supposed to look like us. They're supposed to live where we live. They're supposed to understand us. They have held some hearings, some listening sessions as they called them, and they have recently introduced draft maps. And starting this week, they will hold more formal hearings where they will listen to people and take comments on the maps that they have proposed, or totally fresh comments, not necessarily on their maps. And then they will take those comments and they will edit their maps and make amendments based on the citizen input. And then they will vote to send those maps to the legislature. And then the legislature will vote to either approve them or reject them. If they're rejected, they get a second bite at the apple and they can introduce a second set of maps. And I have a little calendar here. I guess it's a big calendar. There's a lot of dates on here, but if the bold November, the legislature have the opportunity to either vote them up or vote them down. So here are the hearing dates, and I wanted to present this early so folks can write this down and make sure that they have it correct in their calendar. And so if you are looking at this and you don't see exactly where your location is, just pick the one nearest to you, essentially. And the first one is this Wednesday, starting in Buffalo. And I'll have that slide again at the end. Okay, so this is where actually I forgot I have an error on this slide, but don't worry, it's not a big deal. So this is how you sign up to testify. So you'll sign up to attend a meeting, or you can submit testimony without attending a meeting, and you'll do that at the New York Independent Redistricting Commission's website, which is nyirc.gov. Click on meetings, and then you'll have these two options there, and you'll get to see all of the locations, dates, and times. Now, sign up for hearings either ends at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. 2 days prior. That's the mistake. I only have 4 p.m. here, but some of them end at 3 p.m. So just make sure you go and check whether you're a 4 p.m. person or a 3 p.m. person. And if you're planning to testify, I would say just do it as early as possible, so that way you don't have to worry about applying. And you will notice that these are all locations. They haven't offered a virtual option to testify yet. They may do that, but at this point they have not. So now that we have a good idea of what this process is and what we need to do if we want to participate, we should also think about why we care about this process, since it is kind of an abstract process. And this is where that idea of communities of interest come in that I mentioned to you earlier. So essentially with redistricting, what we're doing is we're drawing lines to have our elected representation reflect us. And why is that important? Well, it's important because lawmakers make decisions that impact your everyday life, and they make those decisions pretty much all the time. And the decisions they're making impacts basically every aspect of your life, whether it's your schools, your roads, your public transportation, things like business regulations, utilities, basically everything in our lives. Like I'm even looking at the paint color on my wall, and I know that there are federal regulations around paint and what kind of chemicals can be in paint. Your elected official literally makes decisions about everything. And it's highly likely that you and your neighbors have a lot of shared values and interests based on the fact that you live near each other. You probably do a lot of the same stuff. Maybe you go shop at the same places, your kids go to the same school, maybe you all go to the same park, you all enjoy the same social activities, and all of these things can make you part of a community of interest. So here are some examples of communities of interest. It might be communities that all work for the same place or work in the same field. Maybe you're all medical professionals. Maybe you're all factory workers. Maybe you're all agriculture workers. Maybe you live in Lake Placid and everyone really relies on the tourism industry. Or it could be communities that have similar economic and environmental concerns. Maybe you have really bad water quality in your town, or maybe you have really high property taxes, or maybe you have really high unemployment and poverty. Or it could just be communities with similar values and belief systems. Amish communities, shared churches and religions, Native American tribes, all those things can make you a part of a community of interest. So basically what we're doing here is we're trying to link together the shared issues and values of our community of interest with elected representation and making sure that our elected representative is actually representing us. And so I have a little example here. And again, if you've been on the prior one, you've already seen this one, but I think it really does drive the point home. And during the first round of listening sessions the commission held, I actually heard basically the same example in real time. So I feel like it's a good example. So this is the imaginary story of a town that has 4 town districts and 10 schools within the confines of this town. And this is the map of what that town looks like. So here you can see, this is a fake map. I made this up, and it's basically 4 block districts, and the little schoolhouses on this map are representative of the schools within the town. So there's 10 schools in this town, 4 town council people, and every year the town council people get together and they negotiate the budgets for the 10 schools. And as you can see, there is a school dead center on this map that is split between the 4 town council districts. And unfortunately for this school, it is the worst school in the town because it gets the least amount of funding every single year, because the parents of the children who attend this school only make up a super tiny part of each of the town council's people's district. And as you can see, each of these town council people also have other schools in their district that they would much rather get funding for, because those are either wholly within their district or pretty much wholly within their district, and they need the votes of those parents in order to win elected office year after year. But the school in the center, they don't need those votes to win. And so this school stinks. The school has no money, it has very few teachers, it doesn't even have enough desks, it doesn't have enough books, the books are outdated. And as a result, the school has really high dropout rates, really low test scores, and overall really bad outcomes for the students and ultimately the families of the children who go here. This is our community of interest. This is the community that is having problems because of the way their district lines are drawn. Now, if I were to redraw the district, I might draw it something like this. Now, this isn't the perfect be-all, end-all map. I'm only considering one community of interest within this map making, which is the children and families of the students who go to this school. But there's infinite ways to draw this map. This is just how I did it to make sure that each council district had about the same number of schools within it, and that this particular school was wholly within a single district. Basically, what we're talking about here is, again, linking elected representation with our district lines. But some other ways to think about this is really, really like broadly too. If you don't relate, you're like, oh, I don't have kids, or oh, I think everything's pretty much fine in my district. Think about these questions. Does your legislator care about your community needs? Does your legislator have an office near you? Do they show up in emergencies? Do they ever visit your neighborhood outside of when they're running for elected office again? And are they even familiar with who lives in your community? And if you answered no to all of these, you probably live in a pretty gerrymandered district. So now that we have the idea of communities of interest down, we understand the process of redistricting, now we can do the hard part, the nitty-gritty part, which is actually looking at district lines. Also the very exciting part, because this is pretty fun. And I hope my my explanation and example will help you see that it is pretty fun, but let's start here. So we mentioned earlier that the commission has come out with draft maps, and you'll see 2 maps on the screen here, and they are both congressional draft maps. Something unfortunate that has happened is that the commission has opted to produce 2 sets of draft maps. One is called the letters maps and one is called the names maps. Now that makes our lives as advocates, citizen advocates or non-citizen advocates, whatever your situation is, a lot harder, because now instead of having 3 maps to look at to compare to the current maps, we have 6 maps to compare to the current maps. But don't get overwhelmed, it's not too bad. I promise it's not that bad. So we're going to walk through where to find these maps and what you're looking for. Starting off with where to find them, these maps are on the Redistricting Commission's website, which is nyirc.gov/draft-plans. And this is a screenshot of the page, and you can see the draft plans link is at the top of the page there. Very easy to find. So that part, phew, we found them. That's done. We're easy parts out of the way. Scrolling down on the screen, we can actually see a Google map of all of the maps laid out here. And on the left-hand side, there's these little tick boxes with check marks in them. And we can check and uncheck the maps that we want to see. We can also see city and village lines, county lines, minor civil division, and the current maps as well. So it's very easy to compare the maps, and we can also zoom in and out. At the top right corner, you'll see there's a search bar. We can search for an address, so we can look at our children's school, or we can look at our house. We can really play around with this. It is essentially a Google map. So anything that you've ever done on a Google map, you can do on this map, other than maybe looking for directions. I don't think you can look up directions on this. But at the end of this presentation, I'll do a quick demo of this. It's just too annoying to cut to a website while we're in the middle of a slideshow. So we'll save that for the end. But I'm also going to show you kind of what it looks like too. So now that you know where the maps are, where to find them, and kind of how to look at them, what are you actually looking for? You're looking for basically weird stuff. You're looking for hooks and wiggles in the lines. You're looking for neighborhoods or blocks cut in half. You're looking for skinny district or bridges where there's a piece of district here, a piece of district here, a little bridge connecting. Earmuffs or hats. I have the map of part of New York City here, and the bottom left of the map, you can see Richmond County, AKA Staten Island. And doesn't it look like Staten Island is wearing a hat? That's not really great for district lines. You're also looking at where's your neighborhood within the district? Where's your current representative's office, and how might that change? Is your representative now no longer within your district? And what are other neighborhoods, towns, or areas that are in your district? And do you think you should be with those neighborhoods, towns, or areas in your district? Do you belong together, or do you not belong together? And here's some other things to keep in mind. I know this is a wordy text, but I think this is probably one of the most important points, so much so we made a handout on this. But some other things to keep in mind is the number of districts for each of these levels. So Congress, 26 districts. These districts are huge, around 776,000 people. And because we lost a seat, these districts are even bigger than they were before. You're looking for macro issues here. Is my community split? Is my district drivable? What other counties or areas are in my district? Does my community have issues in common with those other communities or counties that are in my district? Really big picture issues. For Senate districts, it's kind of in the middle, 63 districts. We're looking at around 320,000 people per district. You're looking at macro and micro district or issues rather for that one. And for assembly, 150 districts. These are pretty small, especially in New York City. They're really small because there's density, as we looked at earlier, the density is very high there. So pretty small, around 134,000 people per district. We're looking at micro issues. Is my locality split? Are the things I care about, like my school, where I like to shop, where my job is, are they in the district too? And who else is in the district with me? Who is included? Are my neighbors included? Did my block get cut? You're looking at much more micro issues for assembly. And again, there are 2 drafts, but don't get overwhelmed. Like I said, just really think about yourself here. Think about your own community's needs when you're looking at these districts. So let's practice. And I'm using myself as an example, and we've done this before, and it is, I realize it's a little hard to look at these here, but I hope that if I go nice and slow, it'll be not so hard. So firstly, on the left, current congressional, on the right, names congressional. For this example, I actually use the maps the league uploaded because we shaded our maps. I will link those at the end. So if you prefer a shaded version, you can use our version. If you don't care about the shading, you can use the commission's version. Or you can use both. You can use whatever you want. I'm in Albany. So my district is kind of at the center of the current congressional and kind of towards the right side of the names congressional map. So here I've zoomed in, and I'm zoomed in on where my new district is. And I've made the circle a little bigger than where my house is because I want to include some areas I like to shop, I like to go to, my friends live over here. I want to include that too. So here's what I'm asking myself. Who else is in my district? Is my district drivable? Do I have things in common with these communities? And so the current one, the red one, I'm with Schenectady, I'm with Saratoga, I've got Albany on there. I kind of go out to Amsterdam, which is maybe a little far in my opinion, but I get along with all those folks. On the next side, the blue one, the names congressional, I've got Schenectady. I don't really have Saratoga. I've got Troy in there. And my district is kind of long on this side. We go all the way to the border, which I'm fine with. Rensselaer County, I've got a lot in common with them. But this district, I mean, it's going off of my screenshot. This is long. So here I've got another screenshot, and you can see just how long my new proposed district is. It goes all the way down to Kingston. And if you're a capital region person, you know Kingston is not that close. It's about an hour away. And I'm missing Saratoga, but I have Kingston. But I really should be with Saratoga because I know way more people in Saratoga. Lots of people in Saratoga work in Albany, or people who live in Albany work in Saratoga. The nightlife scene out there, I'll go out there to a bar sometimes. Like, I feel like Saratoga should be in my district, not Kingston, where I've literally been one time to use the bathroom at a rest stop. I don't think we have anything in common with Kingston that I would want to be linked with them. And besides that, this district is not compact. This is a very, very long district. And I'm missing, like I said, Saratoga, a population that I have much more in common with in favor of this very long space. It's just not an ideal district for me. Looking at the other proposal, again, on the left is the current, on the right is the letters. Excuse me. And as you can see on this map, it's a little shorter. We cut off at Hudson. So Kingston's right below there. It's a little shorter, a little bit more compact. But in this version, they've taken Schenectady out of my district, which I don't like, because similar to Saratoga, Schenectady, lots of people who live in Albany work in Schenectady, or live in Schenectady, work in Albany. And I feel like Schenectady is just part of the capital region. When I think of the capital region, I think of Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, Schenectady, and I don't understand why it's been taken out. And I feel like it would suit us better to have maybe a shorter district, but include Schenectady as part of the capital region. And I'm looking at Schenectady, which is now linked with Cooperstown, and that doesn't seem like a great idea. It's pretty far out there. That district doesn't look very compact to me. So comparing to the current one, I think I like the current one better, but I think this district could be improved slightly with just adding Schenectady and maybe shortening it. So now I'm going to look at the current assembly and the assembly names versions. And just FYI, at the end of this, I'll summarize kind of my thoughts on all of these. But I wanted to take the most macro and the most micro to kind of show you my thought process in looking at these maps. So the blue is the current, the purple is the names. And as you can see, the assembly districts are just so many more. There's so many more districts. And the idea of like hooks and squiggles and wiggles is not always the most helpful for looking at these because they are so small. But let's go ahead, we'll go through, we'll look at my districts and see what we see. So here we are again in Albany. I'm a little bit more zoomed in. And again, I made that circle a little bit bigger because I wanted to circle East Greenbush, which is an area of the capital region I love to shop. They have a really good Target in East Greenbush. I go there like at least twice a month. So I've included that here. So my actual district, where I am, is a little bit lower. And again, it's hard to tell with these assembly ones. We'll zoom in a little bit more. And here's where I really live, kind of in the downtown Albany-ish area. I'm a little bit out of downtown, I'm a little bit kind of further in, kind of close to the suburbs, but not quite. And again, the left side is the current, and the right side is the letters proposal. And I'm looking at the current map, and something I learned that I didn't know before I did this little project with myself is I actually live in a pretty gerrymandered assembly district. So if I zoom in a little more to my current district, the star on the screen, which is maybe a little hard to see, it's kind of towards the left corner, that's where I live. And as you can see, I live kind of on the edge of the district, and I've been cut off from downtown. For what reason, I don't know, but I've been cut out of this district. And instead, I'm linked in with a different part of town called Delmar here in the capital region, which is definitely a nicer part of town. They have really good schools there. pretty high taxes too. But I don't know that I have a lot in common with the people of Del Mar. I definitely don't live in a nice house or like have lots of money, and my kids don't go to a nice school. So I don't know why I've been cut off from this other area where I think I have much more in common with, and am instead linked with this area. So that was the first thing I looked at is my street split in the new proposal? And it's not. So here's the red proposal again. There's my house, my street has not been split, and I definitely like that. Right off the bat, I'm like, I like this one better. It didn't split my street. So zooming out again, I'm going to compare the current to the assembly letters. Again, I extended out to include, actually, I didn't quite include East Greenbush on the other one, but again, I feel like I have a lot going on in East Greenbush. We'll zoom in again. And I can see that this proposal includes part of the river of Rensselaer County, which I think is actually pretty good because there's some stuff there that I feel like I go to every now and then, some shops. I think the train station's over there where when we have to go to the city, we take the train in, as compared to the other proposal, which again, my street is split. And then besides that, I'm linked in with this nicer part of Albany County that I don't feel like I have a lot in common with. I like this other proposal too, the black proposal, because it includes downtown and kind of midtown, uptown all in one. And I think it's fair to have the city of Albany be completely represented by a single elected official. I want them to consider all of the needs of the citizens within Albany City and make sure that we have fair representation, that we're getting good funding for the schools in Albany City. I want to make sure that the representative cares about the people there. So you could even argue that maybe we could leave that part of Rensselaer out, but if that's what it takes to hit the population count, then that's fine. Again, I'm looking at my street. Is my street split? Again, my house is the star, kind of, well, that sounds really funny. My house is in the corner, the star is where I live. That's where the district is split. The new proposal does not split the district there. Finally, I'm going to compare the two proposals and see which one I like better. So again, on the left, I'm kind of like where Albany, the word Albany is basically where I live, like right around that part. So that's the district. And I like them both. I think they're both good, although I don't like in the purple, the names proposal, I'm linked with Del Mar because again, I don't think it suits me or the other people living in my community to be linked with an area with much higher income than the people who live in my area. Whereas the other proposal kind of wholly encompasses the city of Albany. I like that the mall's included in there. I like that where our offices is included in there. And I think that's a much better proposal. So here's the recommendations I would make. I would say that my current district is 20. It's really important to make sure the commission knows your current district because that's kind of how they'll compare to the maps that they're making, because unfortunately they don't all know New York State perfectly, but that's fine. Who does? I don't even. But I'm going to say I want more compactness. This district is not drivable, the proposal on the table. I want Schenectady in my district. That's part of the capital region. I want at least part of Saratoga in my district. Again, I feel like that's part of the capital region. And keep Kingston out of my district. No offense to them, but I just don't think it suits me or the people in Kingston to have us linked together. The assembly, my current district is 109. I want to keep the city as a whole. I don't want to separate the city. I want to make sure that we have fair representation from our elected. I want to keep Del Mar out of my district. No offense to people of Del Mar, but I don't think it suits the needs of my community to have a community with much more money, much more wealth linked with my community, because maybe they could influence my legislator more by being a higher donor, or maybe they'll have more people who are more likely to vote, and therefore the needs of my community will not be considered as much. And I want to keep part of Rensselaer in my district because, as I said, I do actually frequently go to that area, funny enough, because the train station's there, there's a really good bakery over there, and I don't mind having that part in my district. And I do know my block split in half. That's probably what I would start with, is don't split my block in half. I don't want to be erroneously separated out from an area that I drive through literally every single day. I don't want to be cut out of that district. And those would be my recommendations to the commission. Now, if you're listening to this and you're totally overwhelmed and you're like, I can't even begin to wrap my head around this, I don't even know where to start, an option for you is to instead propose your own district maps. The commission is still welcoming people to submit their own maps. So how do we do that? there are a lot of free options, thank goodness. And here are 4 of them: representable.org, davesredistricting.org, districtbuilder.org, and districtr.org are 4 rather free options for you to draw your own legislative districts. My favorite is representable, and I'm going to do a 2-second demo just to show you what it's like, because it's so easy. And if this is totally blowing your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, which I don't blame you if you are feeling like that. I felt like that too. But if you're feeling like that, this is a great place to start. Essentially, you can draw your community of interest in really easy, user-friendly software. So you basically log on, you create an account. Don't worry, they will not spam you. They'll ask you some question prompts about your community. What are some activities or services, historical, cultural interests, just some prompts to get you thinking. And then they will present you with a Google map. And this map has lines on it too, but these are census blocks. So this will give you the opportunity to actually click together census blocks to create your community of interest. So I did that here, and I linked in here the university I went to, the park I like to go to, some of the restaurants I like to go to. I didn't quite include our office in this one, but I could have made it bigger and included the office. And then I can take that map and I can download it. And I can download it as a GeoJSON file, a PDF, or a CSV. GeoJSON and CSVs will allow you to actually upload this map into a different mapping software if you wanted to be really technical and you wanted to apply some of the ideas of population density and all of that to your maps. You can do that there. Or if you want the more simple version, you can use this and you can just submit your PDF to the commission. It's very easy. And it will include all of that contextual community information as well, so the commission can understand why you're asking for these specific districts. So that's an option too. But if you're like, okay, I don't want to do that, I want to look at the maps, I want to propose certain specific things about these maps, here are my little steps for doing that. So unlike the community of interest testimony training where we showed people how to basically tell the story of their community, here we're being much more analytical. We want to be saying really, really specific things here to the commission. We want to be analyzing, we want to be hypothesizing, we want to be criticizing, and we want to be synthesizing all of that data into one sort of overarching 3-minute comment. So let's start with analyzing. We've already done this basically. All the things I mentioned earlier, where's your district? Where do I live in the district? What are the things I like? Where are they within the district? Who else is in my district? You're just analyzing the maps. You're doing exactly what I did before where I looked at my maps. Then we're going to hypothesize. Based on these maps, what will the outcomes be like for me, my family, and my community? Do these lines lump me in with a community that has dissimilar needs? That community might have a larger share of the district, that legislator might care more about them than me, and that means my community might have bad outcomes. Basically, my example of Del Mar, again, sorry to keep picking on the Del Mar people, but if my community is lumped in with Del Mar, a much wealthier area than me with much nicer schools than my kids will go to, then they're probably going to get the favor of the assembly member and I won't. And they will get all the nice things the assembly member will fight for. Meanwhile, me in the city of Albany will be disassociated with everyone else who lives in the city. And therefore, the outcomes for my part of the city will not be as good. And then we're going to criticize. We're basically going to take all of what we're saying, what we're thinking about, and we're going to come up with some really concrete things to criticize. So if we're saying not to include an area, maybe we're saying that because they have dissimilar values, maybe they don't work, shop, or spend their time in the community, or maybe they don't have the same issues as my community. If we're saying do include that area, like what I was saying with Schenectady, that community has really similar values. They spend time in my community, they work here, they shop here, and they have the same issues as my community. And again, we're going to look at big picture stuff too. So if this proposal splits my street, that's not good. I don't like that. I want to criticize that. If this district is undrivable, not good. I don't like that. If this proposal is not contiguous, if it has like a chunk bitten out of it, that's another district, that's not good. And if it's not compact, that's also very bad. We want to criticize that. And finally, synthesizing all of our thoughts. This truly is the hardest part, to kind of like get all your ideas down on paper, basically taking your analysis, your hypothesis, and your criticism and condensing it down to 3 minutes. I think it's helpful to just maybe focus on a few major points for your oral comments, but for your written comments, you have basically unlimited amount of paper to use for those. So laying it out in this idea of the analysis, sort of your overarching opinions of the maps, your hypothesis, what you think the impact will be on your community, and then your criticism, why that's good or bad. So now I have some tips for preparing your testimony. So again, key ideas: keeping communities together, eliminating weird lines, wiggles, hooks, or shapes, separating low and high income areas, not splitting defined groups, making my district easier to travel, and making my district more competitive, which I realize is kind of an abstract thing, like more competitive. Well, my district's always blue. So how am I going to make my blue district always competitive? But think about your primaries. Do the candidates running in primaries for the blue side or the red side have a fair shot at even being considered as a potential candidate? Or is it the incumbent winning and winning and winning and winning? We want to make sure our districts are still competitive. And best practices for testimony, we've been recommending to maybe pick one map to focus on for each office. If you have one that you like better, maybe start there. It's a little easier for the commission to kind of work with what they got, as opposed to looking at a fresh map. But again, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can totally propose a fresh map. Keep it brief and to the point when it comes to oral comments, especially your bio and background. You only have a couple of minutes, so make sure that you practice and make sure that you keep it pretty brief. Be specific about your current district number. That's just really helpful for the commission to place you within your district, and including images of maps, kind of like I did where I was circling stuff. If I were to submit these, I would probably highlight and I'd probably draw an arrow to my favorite target and be like, I want this target in my district. No, you don't have to do that. But if you wanted to, you can point to like the school or whatever. Including images is just really helpful, because again, these commissioners are not all from where you live. In fact, none of them might be from where you live. So make it as easy as possible to understand your district and your community's needs. Now, I'm going to re-show you what I showed you earlier. So starting off with the hearing dates, here they are again. I'm going to leave them up for a second so people can figure out where theirs is and write it down. And then here's this slide again, how to register. So again, nyirc.gov, go to meetings, you can sign up to attend, or you could submit without attending. They will ask you to create an account. Again, websites love to make you create accounts, but again, they will not spam you. It's actually nice because they'll add you to their updates list. And so when more hearing dates come out, if more hearing dates do come out, or if they're having a meeting, you'll get an email letting you know that. And I don't consider that spam, because I think you're going to want to stay engaged even after you testify to kind of see the outcomes. And also don't forget, sign up ends either 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. I apologize again, 2 days prior to the hearing. And you can see on the screenshot, there's like the little yellow box that will tell you if it's 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. And if you don't want to sign up and you don't want to testify and you just want to let your voice be heard, you can also just email the commission a submission at submissions@nyirc.gov. This is on the participate page on their website. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have time, I don't want to go in person, COVID, totally reasonable. And you don't have to, you can just do a submission at nyirc.gov, submissions@nyirc.gov. Okay, here's my final thoughts. I have a lot of links to drop in the chat, and I see there's some chat comments. So I'll look at those and we can answer questions. And then I'll give everyone a quick demo on what the actual maps look like on the NYIRC website, so you can kind of see someone doing it in real time. So thanks everyone. And with that, I'm going to look at the chat. Okay, so it's just questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And while I'm waiting for questions to come in, I'll do the quick demo of the NYIRC's site, because I know not everyone has used Google Maps. It is one of those like abstract things. Great. So here is the Redistricting Commission's website, and I'm on the meetings page. I'm not going to click it again because this page does take a while to load. So I'm going to scroll down. And again, like I said, some of these are 3 p.m. So just keep that in mind. And oops, wrong one, but there you go, that information too. I'm going to go to draft plans. And these links at the top too will allow you to download the files. You can totally do that. It will not be in this easy user-friendly format, and it may crash your computer or crash mine. Those are just like huge zip files of all of the maps as like PDFs and PNGs and CSV and GeoJSON. Like, it's just like, if you're really techie, then you can do that, but be careful. I warn you, it may crash your computer. So here is the map, and I'm going to zoom in. And it looks crazy. So I'm going to take away some of these. I'm going to take away the letters plan. I'm going to take away the Senate. I just want to see congressional names. I'm going to zoom out a little more. And now I want to see city and villages. So I just click and I can see all of the city and villages. Okay, now I want county lines. I click and I get all of the county lines. And let's say I want to see my house. I want to see where I live and not have to be so zoomed out. And woof, we can go all the way down. Here's my house. So here's some personal info on me. Please don't come to my house. But I can zoom out again. I can see this is the school that's right by me, the private school that's right by me, and some other things. And I can see the district lines, and I can see Del Mar down here. Bad Del Mar. No, I'm just kidding. So it's, and then we can go here back to the legend, and we can click and unclick things, and we can see different plans laid over each other. And as I said, we also have on our website so a version of these. Unfortunately, we don't have the county lines, and we don't have, it's just taking a very long time to load. We don't have the municipal lines. And unfortunately, my computer is not loading it, but normally we have, here we go. We have a version 2, and you'll just click on this to get the different things that we have. And like I said, we have them shaded. And a full link for this is also on our Facebook page. So if you want to open this in like a bigger window, you can do that from the Facebook. And I see that there's some chats. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, and Susan asked, how can we watch the hearing in real time? Great question, Susan. So they will live stream the hearings on the day of on their Facebook and on their website. They seem to have a little problem with getting the live streams up immediately at the scheduled time. So if it's a little delayed, don't worry. Sometimes they've been delayed by like 5 minutes, but they will both be shared there. And then they have the archives on their YouTube page, and all of those links are on their website, nyirc.gov. Any other questions? Laura, did I miss any questions?
No, I think you got them all. I think if you just drop in all the links, that would be, oh, there's one new message. What's the new? Oh, that's you dropping the stuff in. Okay.
Yes.
No, I think that was it. So if anyone has any other questions, please drop them in the chat or raise your hand. Or if you think of them later too, or if you're in the middle of looking at the maps, you know, email Jennifer and she can help you. Patricia, I guess, has a question. Yep. Patricia?
Yeah, it's actually more of a comment than a question. Jennifer, have you looked at the CUNY website, Redistricting in You? Because it seems that that is so interactive, and it will give you so much more information than what the IRC has, including the population size, as well as the makeup of the population, and comparing the old and the new side by side. Have you guys looked at that much?
Yes, and Patricia, would you mind dropping the link in the chat? We didn't include it in this one only because I wanted to give people the most basic form of looking at maps, but Patricia's absolutely right. It's a great resource if you want to dig a little deeper beyond the idea of communities of interest. Definitely check out Redistricting in You.
Dahlia, I think you're next if you have a
Right.
question.
Yeah, I just got a little confused about with the community of interest. Don't you still have to make it a viable testimony, include the criteria of the population? Because the way it's written, you know, I've looked at representable and so on, it sounds like, well, all that you have to worry about is your community of interest. But to make this a viable testimony, it's a community of interest based on the population that is the census population. Otherwise, the community of interest could be 2 blocks. You understand my question?
Yeah, and no, you definitely have a great point. This is, like I said, this is definitely the more simplistic version of participating in this process, and the commission has to consider any comments that they get. So certainly if you are someone who is really tech savvy and really has the time to dig into population density and all of that, yeah, definitely try one of the more advanced tools or redistricting in you to get like a more full idea of population density. But if you're just a regular person and you don't have time to do all that, you're not a mathematician and you don't want to think about that, you just want to think about my kid's school, my work, where, you know, my roads, all those things. This is like the simplistic version of participating.
Okay.
Bill, I think, has a question, Jen. Go ahead, Bill, unmute yourself.
I think I could probably, I won't have a question, I have a comment. You could turn off the name and turn on the total population of the layer, and as you move, it'll get to a certain number. Each legislative district has to meet a certain number or come close to that number. So when you're drawing your community border, which one include in it, you can also see the total amount of population for your community that you're trying to include. I think there's a 770,000 to 780,000 per legislative district or additional add-on. So you might want to, instead of turn on the label for the name, you might want to turn on the label of the total population. And you can do that in your maps.
Great comment. Thank you, Bill, and great point. Great. Any other questions or final comments or helpful tips? Always learn from other people on these. Great. Well, thanks everyone. Really appreciate everyone being on and really appreciate the additional input and resources because yes, this is definitely not the be all presentation, but it's a helpful, I think anyway, it's a helpful starting point. So we will have a recording for this and I will give everyone back the last 10 minutes of this presentation to get back to their evening. So thanks everybody so much for being on and have a great day.